This video is going to show how to create lofts. Now, to use the loft tool correctly, you need to have a good command of the ability to create work planes. So let's talk about work planes first. Now, at this point, you guys have already used work planes in several different activities, several different problem sets, so I don't feel like it should be something new to you. Let's go ahead and open up a sketch here. Now, just to refresh you, these are three different planes here. These orange manila colored flat surfaces. These act just like a two-dimensional piece of paper that I can draw on. The only difference is that while it looks like this piece of paper is only as large as this square, in actuality a plane extends forever. So I can draw a mile away over to the right or left if I select this plane here. And the way that we create new planes is through the construction toolbar. And as you can see here, this top third is all about creating planes, different ways to create planes. The most basic is the offset plane. And remember, if I kind of hover, it will give me an explanation of what it does over to the right and tell me the information that I need to input. So let's take a look here. Let's make a very simple object. I'm just going to make I'm going to do a center point square. Let's do a circle on this plane, right at the origin. Size is irrelevant right now. I'm done with that sketch. Now I'm going to do a sketch that's actually perpendicular to that runs right through the center point. Okay, so I'm going to do, let's do an arc. I'm going to do a very basic 3-point arc. It's going to run from the center point of that circle to this point over here. I'm going to make it pretty much like a quarter circle, right around 90 degrees. Then I'm going to be done with that. And now I'm going to create a sketch. And I want to create a sketch right here at the end point of this arc. Well, first thing I need to do before I create a sketch is I need to create a plane at that point. Now, let's just say, for example, I want a plane that is parallel to this existing one. Well, the easiest way to do that is with offset plane. And I can put the distance to this point, but if I come over here and I change the extent, I can put to object and select what I want to take it to, how far I want it to go. And now this plane that I just created is perfectly in line with this point. So now I'm going to sketch on it. And keep in mind, even though I chose to sketch on the plane in this area, since it extends forever, I can absolutely sketch right over here where I intended to. So it doesn't really matter where the little plane icon is existing, as long as it's in the same two-dimensional plane that you want to be in. And if you can kind of confirm that here, that this plane passes through where that icon was, but also through the point of my arc. Now let's say on the arc I want to do a square. I'm going to do a center point rectangle. Alright, so now I have two sketches. I have a center line. That is enough information for me to create a loft. In fact, I can do it without the center line, but the center line acts like a guide. And so let's go ahead and take a look at that. Okay, so for my loft menu, I have a box for profiles, and I have a box for rails. Rails are optional, profiles are not. So let's add the profiles. I have 1 and 2 profiles, and I can have a lot more than 2, but 2 is the minimum I can have. Now, if you look here, notice that the preview, it just runs straight across. Now, one thing I can actually do to kind of change how it looks, I can drag around these kind of guidelines that it made on the circle, right? On the rectangle, I can move them around as well, but what makes perfect sense is where the lines come to a point. But sometimes when you loft, this will be kind of wonky and you need to move it around. So just keep in mind, if it looks weird, you can kind of change the lines that it's using. Now that said, I put a guideline in there in the form of a center line, and it's not using that whatsoever. So let's go ahead and change that. So instead of guide rails here, I'm going to select center line, and then I'm going to select the line that I created. And now if you look, it uses that line I created as the guide for the entire shape. And that is the point of any type of a guide, is to provide guidance to the lofting tool as far as where you want it to go. And so anytime that a shape is not doing what you want, consider using a guide, be it a center line or a rail. The only difference is a rail is on the edge and a center line goes, you guessed it, right through the center. Now there are some other options here, but for the most part, this is all we're going to be concerned with at this point. Now a lot of times when we use Loft, we want to make our shape hollow. One of the easiest and best ways to do that is with the shell tool. The only thing with the shell tool is it only creates one opening. As you can kind of see here, this bottom part is actually still solid. That's just what a shell does, but it's really easy to correct. I can just extrude cut, do a sketch and extrude cut this circle, just, the thickness, the wall thickness, which was 0.1 for this, right? I don't want to cut really deep or it's going to go right into the walls here, but I can cut 100 thousandths and it would take care of that issue very, very quickly. So we can go ahead and do that. So I'm going to sketch here, and one thing I can do that it's very useful is, instead of trying to redraw that circle, do the project tool and say, okay, I want all the data on this face. If there were more objects here, I could click each of them individually or only the ones I wanted. So now I basically imported that circle from the previous sketch to this sketch. And so you can imagine, if you have a lot of information, a lot of lines and sketch features, that can be really useful. I'm just going to draw another circle inside, and here's one thing that is useful. If I take a point and I put it right there, and I tell that point that it's going to be vertical to the existing point, now it won't move left to right. And what I can do is I can, I need one more point. If I put points, now I can dimension between the points. So instead of doing the math in my head, I can just say from this point to this point, or from this circle to this circle, is 0.1, because that was the same wall thickness that I made the loft from initially. So now if I extrude this, I'm going to cut, and for distance it's going to be 0.1. And it probably needs to be a negative since I'm getting that error message. Alright, you can see it just cut, and voila, it goes all the way through now. And I didn't go so far as to intersect the existing loft. Like, if I show you that again and I go too far, well, guess what? I just cut into the top here, right? So only go as thick as you need to, which was 0.1. And that just cuts through that wall thickness that I left by shelling. And now I have a very smooth, uninterrupted loft feature. Hopefully this shows you the example of how to get started with the lofts. Some of the key things to remember are, you need at least 2 sketches, a type of a guide, be it a center point or a rail, can be very useful if you're looking for specific shapes. But more than anything, to be able to get these sketches in different places, you need to get comfortable with creating planes in different places. be it offset, or if you have a path that you are recreating, then a lot of times this tangent one works really well, especially for the object that's a big hook. This path along plane is what makes that absolutely quick and easy to do. And these other ones, there's just times where they're useful, where the information you have makes each one of these a good choice. But when it comes to creating your own CAD objects, a lot of times it's just using what works at that time.